N.S.S. पहले तो आपके
हाँ जी
Madam, my 7th period.
Oh wow.
She is also period.
पार्टी रहेगी इसीलिए लोग इसको देनी है जैसे लेनी है अभी चलो
Sir, I'm Sanjeev Sharma.
संजीव जी नमस्कार मैं जय जय
नमस्कार सर और कैसे
नमस्कार नमस्कार जी कैसे
So Manish,
जी
he's
Manish
from Gandhian studies.
I see very pleased to meet you जय जय your nephew Vikas thank you so much thanks for
So
inviting
welcome to the Heritage.
well I've been here many times but thank you for welcoming
It's our pleasure that what are now you can come.
Sir, there is an emotional reason for this thing. Whenever we used to get placements, now it was full of pond was full of water.
that's right
So सबसे अच्छे कपड़े बीच में केमिकल भी यही करता था, यूपीएस भी यही करता था.
अच्छा वो ट्रेडिशन हमें याद नहीं है Oh dear, अच्छा बात ये है कि I graduated in 68. Okay, at that time there was no placement.
और इतना उस टाइम होली का इतना होली बनता नहीं था.
हाँ, तो होली का तो खैर बहुत होता था लेकिन
hostels 4 and 5 only. So the student center it came at a very later stage in 1975 or 77. So this is the reflection of the pool and the reflection of the.
And that's
Yes, no, this is studies. This is studies. And this at the time of the construction of Gandhi.
Oh right, yeah, very nice. That's Lee Carter, yeah.
No, this is Peter Jain.
Oh, this is okay. Yeah.
And both the cousins, they have a different kind of notion also. Peter Jain was more near towards humanity. Without giving much infrastructure to the other, to meet the requirement of the time also. Because if someone is handicapped right now, so he or she can come into this building without any difficulty. So these are some of the things which make him a different perspective also. And these are the blueprints of the Gandhi Bhawan also.
I'm sorry?
Blueprints. There were only 30 blueprints of Gandhi Bhawan. And in fact, one was totally blacked out, so damaged. So we were able to restore it because we had received the grant from Getty Foundation. And in fact, now we are in the second phase of that, of restoration of the building.
I see. You know, I have to tell you, in our final year, we used to have a project, right?
Yes, sir.
And at that time, we used to have these blueprints, you know, and that used to smell of ammonia. So, you know, my project report is still sitting on the shelf, and I think
You still have to preserve that.
Oh yeah. No, everything.
Yes, so it must be there.
And they have this wall, this one,
Yeah.
barcode.
QR code.
QR codes.
QR code.
So, I think different platforms you will find different QR codes that depends about the department, about the philosophy, about the my project,
I see.
and that's how we can bring so many other things to this world.
I see.
So that's
very nice.
And this is one of our recreation, how we have to restore the centers and how we can do later on because our floor is part of heritage.
Oh, I see.
And the beauty administration had modified 4 different buildings. Gandhi Bhawan, Finance Museum, Library and the Alumni. So These four are the main buildings which are under the heritage.
Nice. Thank you. Oh, sorry. It's okay, not at all. We'll manage.
Because I'm used to taking classes of 100 students, so I can speak without the mic. I request the dignitaries, sir, to please come on the dais. I also request Professor Ashu Pasricha ji and Professor Manish to please come on the dais. Pasricha ji to please formally welcome the guests.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening, everybody. It's a honor to welcome our key speaker as well as the audience also. So, on the behalf of our own department and Chemical Engineering Technology Department, Interdisciplinary Center for Swami Vivekananda Studies, N.S.S. unit, and in association with the Alumni Association, they are doing a commendable work on conducting a lecture series, and this time they have invited Shri Jayji Bansalji, and he is the Vice President of Education, World Hindu Council America, and it's very surprising when I was talking to Alma ma'am, his stream was chemical engineering, but now he is totally working on the education. So it will be, it will enlighten, his talk will enlighten us and the students here, and even the faculty members. On the, I hope she is alright. On a very important talk, it's on the caste system, the bane of our existence. Recently, this the caste system that is a very hot topic these days also, and recently there was a Supreme Court verdict also under the Ranjan Gogia. They have said that this caste system, they have talked about this, that the caste system is a bane of a just social order, and pointed out it was one of the thorny problems of which were inherited by the British administration that eventually culminated into a protectionism regime. So they have said that the division of the society that was based on the birth and the calling or profession of a person has continued to dominate the Hindu thinking and the way of life. So in this way they have tried to give them the legal recognition to what we can say that what that came to the term as the depressed classes. And we also know that in 1933, Gandhi's thought, his thinking and his work was totally on the abolition of the untouchability, and he said that the untouchables, that the problem of the untouchable was the bigger evil at that time also, and he felt that if it is necessary to first abolish this caste system, and then we can cross other bridge later. So I won't take much time, and once again I welcome to our main speaker, J.G. Bansalji, and we learn a lot of things and a lot of the thoughts we are already having. I hope after listening to sir, the things will be changed. So sir, welcome to our department, and again welcoming you on behalf of the department. Thank you, sir.
Panjab University Alumni Association, we are connecting with the alumni, and not only with alumni, we are also connecting with different departments. So this is a venture in this direction, and in this we have collaborated with Vivekananda Studies, Department of Gandhian Studies, N.S.S. unit, Chemical Engineering, because sir is a chemical engineer. So all 5 departments we have all come together to organize this event, and we are really thankful to sir because he was traveling to India. So we were really thankful to him that he accepted our request to interact with the students and the alumni. Now, and one more thing, the Department of Chemical Engineering, because as at Alumni Association we are also honoring our alumni for last 3-4 years. In the Global Alumni Meet 3 years, in the Global Alumni Meet we honored our distinguished alumni who have achieved something in the world, have made a mark in the world, or they have contributed for the departmental growth. So we are honored that this year we have our department has selected J.G. Bansal's name for the Alumni Award for Chemical Engineering. So I request Professor Amit Paltu, Chairperson, Department of Chemical, Dr. S.S.B. UICET, which is known as Dr. S.S.B. Shanti Bhatnagar, University Institute of Chemical Engineering, earlier known as Department of Chemical Engineering, when sir graduated from there. So I request Professor Tu to kindly present the citation and a small memento from the post.
Thank you so much.
To introduce Dr. J.G. Bansal, he is a recognized expert in energy efficient utilization of hydrocarbon resources. His most recent appointment from 2014 through 2018 was a distinguished fellow at Argonne National Laboratory in Chicago and as advisor to the US Department of Energy on fuel efficient transportation technologies. Prior to this, Dr. Bansal enjoyed a 38 years old long distinguished career with a global petrochemical company before retiring in 2014 as Chief Scientific Officer. During this tenure, he received many awards and recognitions, including his company's President Award. He has published widely, keynoted at several international conferences, and holds over 24 patents, one of which was nominated for the Most Valuable Patent Award. Dr. Bansal is an alumnus of our Department of Chemical Engineering, Panjab University, of 1968 batch, with distinction in chemical engineering. He also holds master's and doctoral degree from the University of Waterloo, Canada. Apart from his professional interests, Dr. Bansal has also been a keen student of Bharat civilization history and its seminal contribution to the world. He has written extensively on the subject and given talks on international platforms, most recent being at the G20 Interfaith Forum in September 2022. Further, in March 2022, he published a highly acclaimed coffee table book, entitled Hinduism and America, How Hindu Dharma is Transforming the West. And this, frankly speaking, this book is a treat, not only treat to eyes, but an excellently researched book, and I'm fortunate to have a copy of this. And we are fortunate that Panjab University Alumni Association has launched this book in India. This book chronicles the 250-year history of how Hindu thought has traveled to the West and how it has influenced the consciousness of Western society. He is currently serving as Vice President of Education as well as a member of Executive Board, Hindu America Society. And so, you're welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
All right, wonderful. Let me get this a little bit closer so we can communicate well. All right, wonderful. I think we're going to have a bit of a challenge with the projection, but hopefully you can make out. And I will try to fill in with with description of what we're trying to say. So hopefully you will catch everything that I intend to say. Well, thank you so much. I'm truly humbled to receive this wonderful award from my alma mater and my department, chemical engineering. Even though more than half a century has passed since I passed through these halls, or I treaded on this sacred soil. Let me tell you, every time I come to Bharat, every time I happen to be in this area, I always come to the university, to the campus, to chemical engineering. Now, recognizing that many of the people that I used to know are no longer around, so I don't try to disturb anyone. Sometimes I just walk through the halls, say my hello to the world that I spent 4 youthful years in, and then walk out. But it is almost a ritual for me to actually come there every time I'm here and just reconnect with this place. So it just have a very special place in my heart for this campus and obviously for chemical engineering department. Now I think as one of someone had earlier said, my background is chemical engineering, and I had absolutely no idea that engineers can write or engineers can speak. And it was a personal struggle, to be very honest, to actually, to be able to speak on subjects that were not, of technical nature. I got involved, I got interested in our civilizational history long time ago. When I first left Bharat, went to Canada, and a lot of questions were asked of me about my background, about my heritage, about our culture, and sometimes embarrassing questions about caste, about cows, about snakes and snake charmers, and all sorts of nonsensical questions. It basically made me want to know who I am, where I come from, what my civilization was all about, what our contributions were. And so it's been, a challenge for me, but a challenge that I took in stride, and I have been, I've become a keen student of our civilization history, and of course, now I'm dedicating my time, after having worked in the professional world for roughly 40 years. It's become my passion to connect with the Hindu diaspora wherever I find, and try to impart a little bit of what I have learned throughout my journey in this space. So thank you for giving me the opportunity and platform to connect with you and talk to you about this very important subject of our times, the caste system. And I think it truly is a bane of our existence. In the next 45 minutes or so, I would like to share some information with you that I have gleaned from my studies, which I hope will change your mind about the caste system. or actually about the system that is supposed to be the social order for Indians and Hindus. So the caste is really an integral part of the Hindu narrative in modern times. It's firmly embedded in our social and political discourse today. And oftentimes, in fact most of the times, in negative way. I like to quote a piece from Encyclopedia Britannica on the caste system. It says, as a strict Hindu social order, which they are born and will remain until death. At the bottom of the Indian hierarchy is the Dalit, typically the darkest complexion caste. This is just a sample of the kind of nonsense that is spread out there in the Western literature. Okay, so I guess I should be able to move the slides from here.
Yes, sir.
Help me, please. Okay, so obviously you can. Okay, all right, there you go. Obviously you cannot see it. It's just a bit of my speaker profile. I didn't mean to really blur on it. I simply wanted to point out a couple of things. First of all, my contact information is there, which you probably cannot read. So I'm going to leave actually my business card, because if someone wants to connect with me and discuss subject of mutual interest, please feel free to do so. So I'm going to leave my business cards here, and anyone who wants to pick one up, maybe on the stage, pick one up and and just connect with me that way. Second thing I'd like to just mention is several years ago, I realized that the Hindu community lives at the cross section of I do not know and I do not care. Whenever we want to connect with Hindus on issues of seminal importance about their civilization and their cultural history, their eyes simply glaze over. They do not like to talk about it because they're not either they feel uncomfortable or they're simply not interested. So I felt that we needed to do something about it. And so what we did was form a group of writers who would meet every so often. And actually our charter was to initially hold educational webinars on subjects of civilizational history, and particularly on subject of Hindu phobia. There is a lot of Hindu-phobic nonsense that is being spread out there in the world. So our aim was to really educate the Hindu diaspora on these issues. Eventually, we got together a group of almost 20 writers. We meet every couple of weeks, and we discuss subjects that we should be writing on. Over the last 2 years, we have written more than 250 long and short articles, well-researched articles, and I manage a website where all those articles reside. We obviously hold educational webinars as well. So if anyone has a flair for writing and is interested in writing on subject of Hindu phobia, feel free to connect with me, and I'd love to talk to you. All right, moving on. Okay, so why do we want to talk about caste? As I mentioned already, caste is a major fault line in our society. It affects our social ecosystem and politics in a very negative way. Over the last 200 years, the Western scholars have written copiously on this subject. In fact, there are thousands of books and thousands of so-called scholarly articles on the subject. And all of it is derogatory and negative about Hinduism and about the so-called caste system. More recently, it's being used as a weapon to actually castigate Hindus and Hinduism in the West. In the United States, and lobbying by certain anti-Hindu organizations have caused caste to be declared as a protected category in many jurisdictions. In some universities, and you are employed in a position of power in one of these institutions, and one of your subordinates, any of your subordinates can accuse you of discrimination on the basis of caste. And a lengthy, discovery will ensue. There will be a long case that will be, taking place. Now, you may, at the end of that, you may be found innocent, but your reputation would have been ruined in the process. So this is becoming a major wedge for the Hindu society. It's driving a wedge between ourselves and our next generation, because our system is supposed to be the Hindu social order, and how caste system has been imposed upon our society. Okay. All right. Popular myths that have been built around the caste system. The first myth is, it is fundamental aspect of Hindu Dharma. Hindu Dharma and caste are interconnected, interrelated, inseparable. It governs our life choices. Life choices like profession, life choices where you live, life choices who you marry, and so on and so forth. It is, it's probably true to some extent, has been true to some extent, but it is almost taken as an article of faith in the West. Finally, it is unique to Hindu society. In other words, no other society has a system like this. Now, fact of the matter is, these are all myths. And, I like to, I will share some information with you that hopefully will go to that point. Now, the terminology is important. Everyone talks about caste, but reality is there are other cognate words that are important, and those are actually more relevant to the Hindu society, Indian society at large. So, the two terms that we have traditionally used are the Varna and Jati system, as many of you, I'm sure, know. So, the Varna system is really, it applies to an individual. It is relevant to an individual. It is all based on your personal tendencies and capabilities. It has nothing to do with where you were born. If you are, you may be born whatever, but if you are an intellectual, you are good at abstract thought, then you are Brahmin. If you're producing knowledge, if you're imparting knowledge, then you are Brahmin. If you are defending, if you are, then you're Kshatriya, and so on and so forth. Okay. Then there is the Jati system. Jati system is, if the Varna system is about the individual, the Jati system is about the collective. So it is really identification of the collective. How we connect with others around us. So it's really all about social clustering by things like, blood relations. It could be based on professions. It could be based on linguistic or regional affinities. Okay. Many of us know terms like parivar, biradari, kul, vansh, gotra, and jati. These are all interconnected words, but they simply define certain familial affinities. Okay. Then finally is the caste and race system. These have nothing, absolutely nothing to do with Indian system, with Hindu system. They are concepts that came from the West. They are actually discriminating terms that imply racial discrimination. Okay, they have nothing to do with scriptural references. So I'm not, this is not my area of expertise, and I bet I'll find a few of you here who probably know 10 times more than what I know about Hindu scriptures. But since one of the myths is, caste is an integral part of Hinduism, I thought I'll at least make some references to, some scriptural references. So one of the first references that appears is in the Rig Veda, in something called the Purusha Sukta. It is trying to describe the form, how Srishti is created, and makes metaphorical references, actually metaphorical connections of the four varnas to different parts of Brahma's body. Okay, mouth, stomach, thighs, and feet. Now, Shudras are supposed to be born from the feet, and it is, a lot of people take it to mean that feet are, not as important as the other three parts of the body. But I don't know of anyone who thinks his or her feet are less important than the rest of the body. All parts of the body are important to carry on the functions that it's meant to perform. Then we have Gita that makes some references based on the individual's abilities and tendencies, and it talks about the Varna system. In fact, there are very few references to Jati system in our scriptures. It's all typically about the Varnashram system. Finally, there are Dharma Shastras. There are many Dharma Shastras. 18 of them are supposed, quite prominent. They start making some references to endogamy, meaning marrying within one's Varna system, Varna. But then there are intricate rules against propagating inbreeding. So, so that starts to appear in some of the Dharma Shastras. Finally, we have Manusamriti. Manusamriti is one of the Dharma Shastras, and it does have very detailed and strict regulations about the Jati system, or the Varna Jati system. And there are severe punishments. Our Shastra also talks about similar, there also talks about similar regulations. So when you look at the entire body of, our scriptures, the Varna system in this, very sort of strict sense appears only in one or two places in that entire body of, Hindu literature. That's the theory part of it. This is what our scriptures say, but what is the ground reality? Now, as we read accounts of various foreign travelers, we do not see Varna Jati system as a dominant or a rigid social structure. To Ibn Battuta and, to 11th, 12th, 12th century even, there is not a, important mention of Varna Jati system being particularly, important in the social structure. Now, even some Portuguese and other Europeans who came in contact with, with our society in the early 16th century do not really talk much about the caste system, but the social stratification. They do not talk about it. So, what is going on here? Here is a professor emeritus from Cambridge University. Her name is Susan Bailey. She tells us, she's done a lot of research on Hindu society. She tells us that caste was not a major part of Hindu social order until well into the British colonial period. We're talking about the last 200 years. It was not an important part of Hindu social order until late into the British colonial period. Something very simple. So he's saying something very simple. He says Varna system was not all that important. Our assumptions about the Varna system and how it regulated the Hindu society simply have to be thrown out of the window. On the other hand, we still see a lot of examples where people are doing, people are following professions and doing functions that are not at all related to their Varna. So, for example, you can go back to Mahabharata. Of course, Ved Vyasa, he was born a fisherwoman, and yet he is such a scholar, so he should be, he's really performing a function of a Brahmin. In the 4th century BC, you come across Nanda dynasty. They are from the Bharat clan. Chandragupta Maurya, who replaced the Nanda dynasty, he was himself not a Kshatriya. Shunga dynasty that replaced the Maurya dynasty, they were Brahmins. Then in the 7th century, you come across Harshvardhan. He is from the Vaishya clan. A lot of people have heard of Hemu. Yeah, he was, he fought second battle of Panipat against Akbar and was unfortunately killed. Well, his real name was Hemchandra. He's been insultingly called Hemu in our history books. He was from the Vaishya clan. The entire Peshwas, they were from the Brahmins clan. I have read a lot of references. Unfortunately, I do not have good proof to be able to say for sure, but something like 300 different states before the integration in modern India were headed by Shudras. This is something that I would really love someone to do some research on. I certainly would be, looking into it a little bit more. So, there are plenty of examples that say Varna Jati system was not all that relevant or not all that important on the ground in the Hindu society. History, Europe has been a cesspool of racial discrimination. In the 12th century, there were well-organized pogroms. Pogroms are where, a bunch of people get together and start, looting and burning, establishments. So these were pogroms against the Jews. These were organized by the Christians against the Jews. And Christians did not like that. So they created the caste system to distinguish on the basis of blood against the people who had converted to Christianity. And that was the caste system. Okay? And colonized America, they instituted something called Sistema di Caste, system of caste. See, 90% of the original inhabitants actually were killed. And 10%, and there were black slaves that were brought over from Africa. There was a lot of interbreeding going on, and Spanish were crazy about blood purity. These charts were handed out to field officials to determine caste of every child, every person, and you had to register your caste at the time of baptism when you were a child. So the point is, the caste system was being practiced in the Spanish America in 15th and 16th century. The Portuguese were doing the same in their colonies as well. The word casta, it comes from Portuguese America. So now, when Portuguese came to India, they introduced the system. And someday, if I have time, I need to do a little bit more research on what Portuguese did in Goa. That's a story that needs to be told as well. It is actually a brutal and a bloody story, but it needs to be brought out. Okay, so now the word casta is somewhere in the ecosystem. Now we have the British. So British, at some point they won the India lottery. 1757 Plassey War, they won, and they got a foothold in Bengal. They started expanding, and 100 years later, they were practically masters of the entire country of India. Now, during this period, they have a problem. They're very few in number. They need to control a very large population, and this is not some people. They are actually they're pretty high, pretty sophisticated people, educated people. So how do you control millions with few thousands? That was the problem that we had to solve. So how do you solve it? I mean, you could use force, but force has only short-term effect. You need to actually change the minds of the people. And how do you change the minds of the people? Two ways. They had many strategies, but I'm just talking about two here. First thing is you have to destroy their civilizational history. You have to basically make them feel that they never accomplished anything, they never did anything, they have no history, all there is a bunch of fools. As a matter of fact, on the side here, there is a nice statement by George Orwell. He observes that to destroy a people, you must obliterate their understanding of their history. And that was one of the things that British were bent on doing. The second thing was to create and propagate fault lines in the society. I'm going to give you 3 examples. The first one is the introduction of the English education in 1835 by famous Vivekananda. And the idea was to create brown people on the outside but white on the inside. They had to think like the British, they had to love everything British, they had to love they basically became Anglophile, and they started, that speaks for many of us, unfortunately. The right language, I would be speaking to you in a local language. But luckily some of us still stayed close to our roots, but many people moved away from their roots and actually started hating their roots. The second one was to create things like a martial race, things like these are business race, these are this is that. You see, when you make someone feel special, a particular group of people feel special, they start putting distance between them and the rest of the society. They start feeling like they're superior. So it is actually creating a very strong wedge in the society. So that's one example. The third and probably the most prominent example is the Aryan invasion theory. 1853, Max Miller introduced something called Aryan invasion theory. In a nutshell, what it said is the Indian society is a product of clash between an invading, fair-skinned, highly civilized Sanskrit-speaking aliens who came from somewhere out of India, somewhere from Europe, had to be Europe, it could not be anywhere else, and the dark-skinned barbarian aborigines called the Dravidians. Now, there are many different aspects to it, but right away you can see that it creates a divide between the so-called Aryans and the Dravidians. And that divide, unfortunately, continues to dominate our politics to this very day. Now, I have written, there are thousands of articles written on Aryan invasion theory. It doesn't hold water anymore. I've personally written a 10-page article on this. It doesn't hold water, but it doesn't matter. It is being taught as a fact. We probably, I read it when I was in high school. I'm sure many of you have read Aryan invasion theory. It continues to be taught unfiltered, unfortunately, to this very day. Very sad. 1813, the British Parliament had passed something called a Charter Act, which allowed the Christian missionaries a free hand to come here and start preaching and start working on what they call India's religious and moral improvement, as if we needed improvement. The idea was to convert the dark heathens to the only true faith on earth called Christianity. Unfortunately, from their point of view, they were not gaining a lot of success. And in 1850, there was a conference held in Madras at that time, in the Madras presidency, of the missionaries, and the statement they made from that was, Caste is one of the greatest obstacles in the progress of gospel in India. See, caste was coming in the way, because when people belong to a caste, they have an identity. As soon as someone leaves that caste, that person is no longer allowed in that group. Was not so that prevented people from leaving their caste, leaving their parivar, leaving their biradaris, and becoming foreigners in their own land. And of course, missionaries didn't quite enjoy that. The second fact that came along was the 1857 war, and India's first war on freedom. It was a rude awakening for the British because they almost lost it. And the British Crown, of course, blamed the East India Company for their inaptitude. They took direct control of India, and they said they will never allow this to happen again. And they would spare no expense to make that happen, make sure of that. So they initiated a massive project to subdivide the masses so that they could never unite and come together again, and come up against it. Just a guess. So 30 million manuscripts exist today in the world. 30 million manuscripts. I didn't believe it myself until I realized that Government of India has a program where they have acquired 10 million of them already and have digitized more than half of them. Okay, so 30 million manuscripts. Out of that, they found Manusmriti as the one that was the authoritative book that had to be played out. So, out of 30 million, they found one book that gave them a historical and religious cover for this exercise. So that is what they did. Now, what is interesting is, and again, you probably can't read the code, unfortunately, so I'll read it for you.
This blackboard will be contrasting.
I'm sorry?
Because if you focus to blackboard,
They can
you can try it.
Wonderful. So they were really trying to build on the Varnajati system. And this fellow is saying, he's saying whether there ever was a period in which Hindus were composed of 4 classes is exceedingly doubtful. So he's actually trying to say the exercise that the British government is trying to undertake is infeasible because the system that they're trying to build on actually doesn't exist, or is not being followed by the people at large. And this wasn't the only fellow. There were plenty of people who were trying to tell the British, but the Sahib was not having it. They knew what they wanted to do, and they were going to do it. So of course, when something doesn't exist and you try to impose something on it, there's going to be a lot of confusion. Okay, there were a lot of people who were extremely unhappy about their relative ranking. No one wants to be below someone. I mean, that's just human nature. As soon as you create a vertical system, you create winners and losers by definition. Okay, the Varnajati system was never meant to be a vertical system. It was a system where people had basically a group of affinities. And their relative ranking really was never ever codified. Okay, so here we have. I lost my. Excuse me. There were a lot of people contested their caste assignments, but of course they were ignored, like in the true British fashion. There were a lot of regional differences which required, constant manufacturing of new castes. So for instance, in 1901, there were 16 and 41 castes in this catalog. 20 years later, there were 4,147 castes. Well, this, by the way, pales in, in comparison to what you will find a few years later under our own system. But so hold on to your seats. Interestingly enough, if no suitable caste was found, the name of the profession was used as a caste. So if you're a blacksmith, Lohar is your caste. If you're a goldsmith, Sonar is your caste, and so on and so forth. And in some cases, people had titles like Chaudhry or Sheikh. They became the caste. So you can see this was a totally artificial system that was being just manufactured out of thin air. Now the problem was with the tribals and dislocated people. They really did not have this, even the Varna Jati system. So it was very difficult to kind of fit them into this seriatim. Herbert Risley was the director of Ethnography and Census Bureau in the British Empire. He was a firm believer in something called the theory of social Darwinism. Now, what is social Darwinism? See, Darwin had introduced his theory of origin of species in 1859. And that was about how species grow, how species evolve, and so on and so forth. Different species evolve. The Europeans, in order to show their race was superior to everyone else's race, used Darwin's theory to evolution of races, evolution of societies. So, social Darwinism is all about how different societies evolve. And the theory said that societies evolve according to their innate ability and limitations. So certain societies will only evolve to this extent, other societies evolve a little bit more, and so on and so forth. And by the way, white race has evolved to the maximum extent, therefore they are superior to everyone else. So that was, that is the mindset this fellow is coming from. So he has the problem of, assigning castes to tribals and dislocated people. Measurements of, various aspects of the nose, whether it's the length to the width to whatever have you, and he correlated it with degree of evolution somehow. I don't ask me how he did it, but he definitely did it. He built it on something that existed before, something called phrenology, which was measuring the cranium in certain ways. So he was just building on some existing technology, but in this case, he used nose which was easily available. And his army went around, tribal communities, measuring the various aspects of their noses and assigning them castes. So Risley's calipers decided the caste for millions of people. That is a fact of life. All right. The classification system was first introduced in 1901 census. Everyone was forced to identify with the caste that they had been assigned to. And by 1931, it became obvious to them that this system wasn't working, it was just too unwieldy, and they gave up. I have a quote at the bottom. Again, you can't read it, so I'm going to read it for you. This is from a fellow named Middleton. He was census superintendent for the British Empire in 1921. And this is what he says. We pigeonholed everyone by caste. And if we could not find a true caste for them, label them with the name of a hereditary profession. We deplore the caste system and its effects on social and economic problems, but we are largely responsible for the system that we deplore. This is the superintendent of census of British Empire telling us that they are the ones who created the caste system. Let me tell you, this is not the end. But you can already see that you've created winners and losers. There's some high caste, some low caste, and a lot of people who are in the crafts, who are, who are providing services, whether they are like I said, goldsmiths, ironsmiths, or potters, or whatever have you. All of a sudden, they got thrown into these lower castes. So you are building a large collection of so-called Dalit communities. It might have been a social problem. We're not saying that the Varna Jati system was, all golden. There might have been some social issues there, but all of a sudden, British made it far, far worse. But that was not the end. And by the way, I'm close to the end of my talk, but just 2 more slides. In 1871, they created something called Criminal Tribes Act. What was the Criminal Tribes Act? Nearly a tenth of the population was declared hereditary criminal. In other words, I think at that time the population was about 130 million. 13 million of them became habitual hereditary criminals by law. Every single one of them. And the assumption was that these people were incapable of earning a living outside of crime. The act exists, read it. It's it's available. So what did you have to do? You had to compulsorily register yourself with the nearest police station, every single member of the tribe, and on a periodic basis you had to go and give your attendance to make sure you still existed and you were still, you were not doing anything criminal. And your movements were curtailed, and you could be rounded up on a mere suspicion of having committed a crime at any time. Okay? So, what was the reason for doing this? See, there were a lot of tribes who had participated in the 1857 war against the British. The Bheels, the Sansis, Minas, these are some of the tribes fighting from Rajasthan. Barwaris, Mundas are, I think, from Maharashtra area. They all participated in war against the British, so they had to be punished, and this was their way of punishing them. Now, what does it have to do with caste? The reality is they got basically disassociated from the society. They got isolated from the society, no means of educating themselves and uplifting themselves. And where did they go? They ultimately became part of the community. By force, by law. So that's unfortunate reality of our 200-year, 150-year history of British Empire in this country. I think it should be obvious to you what the impact of all these machinations was on the society. Caste system became a de facto social ordering system for our society. Varna Jati, which was meant to be a fluid social construct, eventually got transformed into a rigid vertical structure. And caste, Varna and Jati terms became completely intertwined. Everyone is confused about, when we want to ask about someone's group, we say, what is your caste? We do not ask what is your Varna, we don't ask what is your Jati, we ask what is your caste. And it is the effect of the English education system, because we think caste is a direct translation of these terms. It really is not. It's a completely different animal. So, and of course it created a large surge in the Dalit community, as I said earlier. So let me just leave you with some final thoughts. This is all the story I was going to tell you about how caste system came into existence. And the reason for really talking about this is so that you know the evil that you're living with is not of your own creation, and there should be a way for us to talk about it and hopefully do something about it. Do, some way to undo it. Now, I don't hold very high hopes of being able to undo it for the, for the reasons that I'm going to describe, but I think education is the first thing that, is a start. So, British colonizers have done their dirty work. We all understand that hopefully by now. But you see, did we do our part of the job? Did we try to do and make an honest attempt to rectify the situation? And my perspective is that unfortunately we did not. You see, we took caste system directly into the Constitution. If you want to destroy something, you do not give it a constitutional identity. There were 100 different ways to, uplift the people who were affected by the, by the caste system. Economic, strata could have been used as a way to, give them preferences and so on and so forth. But we used the caste system, built it, really bolted it into a constitution. Very, very sad, very foolish. Would you believe, and I haven't checked the census, I took the census myself, but this is from a secondary source, and I hope, I hope that this is wrong, but 2011 census had 4.6 million castes. In 1931, when the British left it, there was only less than 5,000. Now there are 4.6 million castes in the last census, and some 99% of them had less than 100 people in them. I don't know what we're doing. Most people, of course, don't know how caste differs from the Varna system. Now, a bit of good news, very small, but a bit of good news, and that is, as our young people are becoming part of this mobile workforce, they don't seem to care about the caste system. So that may be good news, but reality is, you have on the other side the reservation system. It's like a black hole. It's pulling everyone towards it. Everyone wants to be part of this, free money or free, whatever the benefits come from being part of the reservation system. So I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to get resolved. It is a major problem for the society. On one side, young people may be becoming caste agnostic, but whether the reservation system will ever leave us alone is very much open to question. And on that note, I will close my talk. Thank you very much for your attention. And of course, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah. If you have any observation or if you have any question, so you may raise your question or observation, please. Yeah, please. And introduce yourself, please.
Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Myself is N.S.S, all the way from Seattle, USA. I was associated with the last two before COVID. So I heard Mr. Bansal. I appreciate his views on the caste system, and it's very well thoroughly researched, everything is involved, and state in front of you in a very professional way. I like that. The caste system, in my view, going away eventually in a phases. It is already gone in metropolises. Most of the cities don't feel like this, but it will eventually go away. I will share my one view, which is, if we don't change with the time will forcefully change. That's what I want. Again, thank you for the time.
Well, thank you very much. I like the optimism in your voice. It's, I would like to see that happen as well.
And we also run two non-profit there. One is religion and one is social. 6th Center of Seattle and Service of Pure Humanity. So, I am glad spokesman.
I want to draw your attention to the first question that you have asked.
So what is the honest attempt you think we should make? So that.
What is the honest attempt we should make?
Yes. I want to understand your perspective on it.
I think, we should first think in any endeavor is education. Educate ourselves as to what it is and how we got to where we got to. And, have that conversation around dinner tables, have that conversation with your children, have that conversation about, in your social groups, about the, this is the system it was meant to be, this is how it was created, and we, as people with conscience, good conscience, have to somehow get rid of it. I mean, I to be very honest, it's not a great answer, but I think, having that grassroots level conversation is probably the first step. There can always be, the regulatory ways and so on and so forth, but, it's very, very difficult to impose social laws on a society as diverse as ours, that everyone is going to buy into and is going to be happy with. I think there has to be a groundswell from the people at large that this is a system that we need to get rid of. That's the best answer I can give you.
Anyone else?
It was really great to...
You need to speak a little bit louder for me.
Thank you, sir. It was really great to hear from you. Actually, I have an observation that you mentioned about that it was not prevalent in caste system, was not prevalent in ancient India. But when we are mentioning the rulers of ancient India, like you mentioned, Harshvardhan was a Vaishya or the Chandragupta Maurya as a Kshatriya. But is it correct to why are we using these notions in modern times if it was not prevalent in ancient times, right? And my second observation was that when you said Fine did not mention about caste system, like Fine directly mentioned about it on his travels to India.
Yeah, I'm sorry that some of the speaker is not just letting me hear you well.
Could you explain your question again?
So my question is that you mentioned that Kshatriya and the Vaishya, we designated these terms to Harshvardhan and Chandragupta Maurya. These two terms are like, you said that it's a social, it's a colonial construct, caste is a colonial construct. But using these terms to ancient rulers, we are saying that it's prevalent in Indian ancient history also. My first question, is it prevalent in ancient Indian times?
Actually, this question is because you had said that you have studied about 300 rulers who belong to different communities.
Right.
But once you say that there was no caste in the ancient system, then how can you designate these as Vaishyas or Kshatriyas?
That's a good question. I have not actually personally studied. That's why I made that point very clear. I have read references to it, and I would like to do more research and find out exactly what the data actually says. If the data actually supports this assertion, it is actually a very powerful piece of data. But I do not know how they've characterized it. I've only read it, some scraps of statements here and there. So I made that qualification very clear in my talk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The last question to you, sir.
Firstly, sir, I will not go into the conceptual thing. You have talked about fourfold hierarchy. Actually, sir, in my humble summation, it is fivefold. There is one varna that is known as Antyaja, Pancham, or which are known as untouchables. They are even not inside the varna. So that is my first summation. Secondly, sir, if we bring in some data, there is a study by Thorat, Jodhka, Deshpande of 11 Indian states comprising of 565 villages including Panjab in 2006. There is still untouchability being practiced. So if there is a social stratification by the name of untouchability, which is I think the most heinous form of treating a human being, so this divide will remain. So my humble submission is, sir, that if we provide education to all, which is still not accessible, there is a high dropout rate amongst the marginalized, especially in rural areas. So if there is not a level playing field, then how we can have equality in the real sense of the term as our constitution has defined. Thank you.
One or the governance system. But I was just trying to basically simplify the conversation, and it was really not centered to the point I was trying to make anyway. So I didn't go into the gory details of the governance system. But as far as the inequities, social inequities that exist, that is a fact of life. We've all seen and experienced it ourselves. And when they came into existence, how they came into existence is another subject that needs to be studied, obviously. But all I can say is that very serious amendments have been made in the Constitution, to the point where a lot of people who belong to so-called other Varnas want to now, be part of this, the welfare schemes. So yeah, there are going to be inequities in any society, and we have to just work on that. My point was simply to try and show how a simple system has been distorted to the point of beyond recognition. All right. Anything else? No. All right.
Thanks for giving this lecture. So I would request Professor Sanjeev Sharma, Professor Anupama Sharma, Dr. Ashok Basilicha, and myself to be on the dais to give a token of love to Sir for giving this particular lecture.
Lovely. Thank you so much. I'm so honored. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And this is a copy of the book of university.
Okay, not bad.
You have a book of the good one. And this is also one of the parts of university.
Handmade, very nice, lovely. You'll find a way to follow around my book.
This is Gandhi.
Ah, how lovely, very nice. Thank you. And we'll open the last one. This is the copy. Nice. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope it was useful to you, and love to reconnect with you again in the future.
Vote of thanks, so kindly bear with me. So you have to be with us for another 5 minutes. On behalf of our collaborative departments and on behalf of Professor Sanjeev Sharma, Professor Anupama Sharma, Professor Amrit Pal Tululan, and Dr. Ashok Basilicha, and on behalf of myself and on behalf of Honorable Vice Chancellor sir, that who have given us this permission to conduct this kind of webinars and seminars and as well as talks also. So we are very grateful to you that you have come to this place and given us this lecture. In fact, there are certain things which I would like to ask you in between also, and this is something which you would like to work further also, that how we can bring the different points as we were talking about, that as sir has also mentioned in the last, that in case if we give more importance to the word instead of the caste system, then I think that would be the best solution for us, that in case if we come out of these problems and how we come out of all such issues. And the second aspect is that how we rebuild our history and how we bring the education system in front of us. Because education is one of the most important factors, that how we can bring the change in the humankind. And in fact, Mahatma Gandhi had said that be the change you want to see in this world. So how we can bring the changes as the new education policy and bring some certain changes also. But what about the other aspects? Because as you mentioned that the Britishers wanted us that we should be the white collar gentlemen, that we should on the table and we just work for them. So that approach has to be changed, and the kind of legacy we were having and the kind of our scriptures, the holy books they were having, how we can bring from that perspective, that is the most important factor, because we were the person, we had gifted so many things to the world, but how we can bring all such things. And the third one is, what is the real meaning of religion? Whether we want to use it for our own self or for the others. So that these points are, in case if they are taken care of, I think our motto is clear. So again, we are thankful to some of our prominent personalities, Engineer Interdisciplinary ji, who is Engineer and Chief of Panjab Electricity Department, who have given so much importance and have given so much strength to the Panjab Electricity Board also. So thank you, sir, for coming to this place. Professor Monica Gawal ma'am, Professor Mr. Vikas Gupta ji, Mr. Hajira Singh ji, and so many other people who have come from the other departments, especially the students. Despite the fact they are having the examination also, and they were able to come to this side also to listen to the lecture of sir. So once again, we are thankful to you, and we would be continuing with our own collaboration, and we would like to bring you back to this platform, maybe by the online or by the other platform. So once again, thank you, and all of you are invited for the cup of tea along with the pakoras also. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you.
That needs to be retrieved. That, if you put 100 researchers for, it would take a lifetime to actually, and you still may not be accomplished like this. So, the problem is finding people who are interested in doing I see. So I went to University of Waterloo actually. That's where I got my PhD from.
I did law there and working as a lawyer. The first was in my children have
So are you now here or there or halfway?
No, I come on winter every year.
I see.
Because of the snow, then go back.
And your children are It really isn't that complicated.